thank you sincerely, not just for coming here today, but for actually all of the work that you do every day. It's tremendous, and you're dealing with the most vulnerable of people in our society. And we talk about the big numbers and housing for all and 300,000 homes and all of that, but actually it comes down to the individual lived experience of the people who suffer homelessness. So you're on the cold face of it, and the people who work with you are. And we really appreciate it, the work that you do. Just some questions. Pat, I suppose if I could come back to you on your opening statement in terms of the causes and the prevention of homelessness, and particularly the issue of illegal evictions and the moratorium on evictions. And we discussed this issue with the DRHE and the department when they were in previously. But and the DRHE very clearly stated that it isn't illegal evictions, or it isn't evictions that is actually driving homelessness, but it's a whole number of other factors. And really they pointed to, and it's not funds either, they said very clearly, funding is not an issue now, but what they clearly stated was an issue was supply, the supply of actual built properties, because we're coming out of a decade of undersupply, and we've had construction lockdown for 2 years, or for two lockdowns in the last 2 years. So I guess my question to you is this, and you mentioned actually landlords, small landlords leaving, which huge problem. So how do we keep small landlords? How do we increase supply in the immediate and short term? Because I heard what you said. People who are homeless tonight won't be homeless in 3 years' time, you believe. And the people who are experiencing homelessness now will not be experiencing it in 3 years' time. That's great news. But 3 years is a long time. So
it's a long time, and with the best will in the world, it's going to take a long time to get construction back in place and get the right type of houses in the right places back in position. So our view is that prevention is the key issue that we need to be dealing with right now, and prevention to stop people falling into that trap of homelessness in the first place, which can then again lead on into trauma impacts and everything else for individuals and for families. So that's key.
So like increasing the homeless HAP?
HAP is a major issue at the moment. There's no question about that, and it's an issue around the country, and it's having an effect on people in terms of drawing on the resources which they can use in other areas. They're obviously some of the most marginalised people that we see in society.
What about acquiring properties, leasing properties?
Acquiring properties is something that we've called for, and it's something that we think should be considered very carefully, but I think it's something that has its place, particularly in places where households have support needs. And we have been willing, amongst others, to step into that breach with the support of the local authorities. And we think that it has its place. It does not have to be a wide initiative, but there are certainly cases and case-by-case basis that it can have a major impact.
And what about leasing properties?
Leasing properties, there's a difficulty in leasing properties at the moment. Leasing properties at the moment, what we see as the key element is increasing supply.
Absolutely.
And making sure that we have more units, particularly one-bedded units, around the city and around the major places of population. We see that as key. But we also see as key making sure that people with support needs are supported, and that the services that they need in order to keep their homes is provided and funded.
Yeah, I suppose I'm Dublin City, I'm north side of the city here, and there was no building in the last 10 years. There was no new social homes built, and there was no affordable homes built, right? So that's just a reality. And to be fair, all of the services here know my constituency very well, because a large number of emergency accommodation services are being provided in my constituency. Government has committed 20 billion to build homes, but it's going to take time. And in the short term, I'm wanting to understand what do we ask government to take leases on properties that are actually built today and take people out of substandard emergency accommodation where they can't cook a meal or wash their clothes or do homework with their kids, and lease properties?
I think
Is
that
there a place
also
for
has
it?
its place. Excuse me, that also has its place. There's no doubt about that. Anything that will increase the supply for people in emergency accommodation is definitely worthwhile. There's no question about that. But it's not just that. We also need to provide that services and supply that go along with it. But to stop people falling into that trap and stop people actually moving into emergency accommodation in the first place is key. We are seeing, the smaller landlords. There's been a marked trend of people leaving the marketplace as landlords, and anything we can do to stop that.
How can we stop them?
I think there are ways you can do it, and I think what typically tends to happen is that that accommodation from those landlords from private rented accommodation is moving. It's not going back into private rented accommodation. At best, there's a gap period where one landlord leaves and another landlord buys the property, and at worst, it moves out of private rented altogether. And as a result, people at the lowest rung of the ladder who are looking to rent properties, that the supply is further reduced.
From my experience over the last 5 years in Dublin City, properties like that where landlords who'd owned properties, maybe bought them 20, 30 years ago, had seen the value of the property drop dramatically in the crash. Yep. When they saw the property prices rise again, it was their pension, they wanted to sell it. Where the local authority could purchase that home and keep the family who was renting in situ, they were on the housing list anyway, that prevented the family becoming homeless.
Correct.
Is that the type of measure you're talking about?
That would be a key measure forward in those particular set of cases,
okay.
Yes.
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry, I want to come to mendicity, because your report also talks to an issue that we've considered here, and it's the whole quality and the private emergency accommodation is we have to get away from it, but it's going to take time. So just on the 96 people that completed your survey, I think it was 2/3 of them don't qualify for social housing.
No, it was more. It was out of 105, 92%.
92%. Okay. Tell us why they're not qualifying for social housing.
Because your local authority application is assessed under sort of 5 headings. So that you are working, that you are studying, that you have a medical need, children in school in the area.
It's okay, the last one.
And the local connection.
Yeah.
So if people are working but working for too short a time, if they don't have a local connection, if somebody has been working in Wexford and they arrive in Dublin, they have no local connection here. There's a myriad of barriers in people's way.
But a lot of your respondents were more than 2 years.
Yeah.
So after 2 years, surely they've certainly got the local connection.
No, your time in homelessness doesn't count.
Okay.
So, the longer people are staying in emergency accommodation, the less opportunities they have to move out effectively. So I think that's why we really need to approach this with a sense of urgency. And when somebody arrives into emergency accommodation, resources need to be applied really swiftly, because the conditions certainly that people are describing to us, if they're there for 18 months or 2 years, their needs may have not been complex on day one, but they certainly are after 18 months.
Thank you, Ms. Santoro.